Today we host a familiar face. You've seen him before. He's a prominent politician, a prominent lawyer. He needs no introduction really, but we'll introduce nonetheless for the purposes of courtesy. He is Douglas Mwonzora, the president of the MDC. I'm not sure if it's MDC or MDCT, or perhaps MDC Alliance. I'm not too sure.
Well, it's now MDC. All those are derivatives from MDC. So we have MDCT when we wanted to distinguish ourselves from Ngube's MDC.
Right.
And then MDC Alliance when we came together, but the germane name is the MDC.
Right.
That's why no one else can use the term MDC anymore.
Apparently, there is someone using that term right now. Your former chairperson, Komichi, he says he is a party or perhaps a splinter of the MDC, which is called MDC Trangirai.
Komichi is a very confused man, with all due respect to him. Immediately after the elections, he announced that he had formed a party called the UMDC. It found no follower. Then immediately before the election, he joined Chapman's DUZ and contested as the senator for DUZ. And then after that, he came back to say he is a member of the MDC, our MDC. And then when we took him to court against using the name, he then said he's now the president of MDC Trangirai.
Right.
And he says that it is a different name. The matter is before the courts. And definitely we are going to take the party our name from him. After the High Court judgment, he found himself next to Mr. Mudzuri now, trying to get the same glory as Mudzuri. So he's a very, very confused man, and I don't know why the confusion, but we are going to take our name. The MDC belongs to us. It is a patented name. We have a trademark, which we have registered with the MDC since its formation. Right. No one can use it. I hear many people saying, "Oh well, it is MDC Trangirai with a Y, or MDC this or MDC that, and therefore it is different." The courts have now ruled. I think it was in the case involving Chicken Inn and the Chicken Slice. Right. And I think there was a use of the love that chicken. And there was a debate. Some they were saying, no, but this is from Chicken Slice. And while others were saying this is from Chicken Inn. The judges ruled that there is a central name. That is the one that is protected. And that case is going to be very handy to us when we debate the issue of the MDC. Why people always want to use the MDC is to try to make sure that the MDC does not get into power. It is the party to mark. So state agents find desperate people that they employ to confuse the MDC. So even if we were to solve the issues that we have at hand, there will come another person sponsored by the state for the purposes of confusing the electorate. But I'm sure the state is running out of its bag of tricks. We have read through them, and the MDC is certainly a political force in this country.
But speaking of state interference, as you put it, it seems whenever there's a fight within the opposition, you as in the opposition tend to always invoke the name of the state whenever you feel out of favor, perhaps like say in a court judgment, there's quick inference into the court interference, into the state. Why is that so? Is it real, or perhaps it could just be a red herring?
In this particular case, Sean, at the beginning of January, some people from the state visited some of our leaders, and they asked them to get rid of me on the basis that I was a stumbling block to the 2030 agenda. That was even before my press conference, at which I put the position very, very clearly that we were against the 2030. So they came and they tried to influence my officials to rebel against me on that basis. They did not succeed. my officials refused. And a week after that, we held a press conference. And since then, we have been very, very consistent regarding our opposition to the 2030 agenda. Some of the people from the state did approach me against the 2030 agenda, and my answer to them was that I am a constitution maker, and my loyalty does not lie with individuals. My loyalty lies with the Constitution of Zimbabwe. It must never be forgotten that I was part to drafting the Constitution.
Right.
And as things stand, I'm the only one who is left, who is able to talk about this, because my two co-chairpersons, Edward Mukosi, was not feeling well. Paul Mangwana cannot dare speak. So the only person who is left, the only co-chair who is left, and as a last line of defense of this constitution, is myself, and I feel duty bound to speak against it. And my opposition to the 2030 agenda is not born out of malice. It is well reasoned. Number one, why should we let an 83-year-old man who is going to be 86 when his term expires get another 5 years? What's the source of desperation for us as Zimbabweans? Number two, Zimbabwe is under sanctions, Zidera sanctions, and the other sanctions. Maybe we may get an executive order now that Trump is there. And one of the reasons why Zimbabwe is under sanctions under Zidera is the issue of governance.
Right.
Now, putting this constitutional amendment makes the situation worse. Zimbabweans will remain under sanctions. So what type of patriots are they that would want their people to suffer? Remember also that Zimbabwe applied to join the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth has made it clear that they are willing to accept Zimbabwe, provided that, among other things, it does not pursue the amendment. Right. So as a result of personal greed, we are going to have our country remain under sanctions. We are going to have our country remain under unable to join the Commonwealth. And we are going to have our country always being a laughing stock of the world. I am against that. I am a proud Zimbabwean. I know there are a lot of Zimbabweans who are proud people, and they want to be proud of their country.
Right. And but in defense of the president here, he has come out in the open several times that first off, he is a constitutionalist, so he abides by the constitution. And secondly, he says at the expiry of his term, he is going to step down and allow someone else to come through. So he has come out clearly. So I'm not too sure if it's not enough for him to state that.
It is not enough. What the president said was necessary but not sufficient, Sean. The president said it before, I think in an interview with the Christian Amanpour, and then sometime in China, and then in Mutare, and there was another place that he said he is a constitutionalist and that he will not accept the third term. But he is allowing his very, very close people to continue telling the people about the 2030 agenda. He swore in, I think, deputy ministers recently and asked them to do a slogan. And the slogan, the 2030 slogan, was then chanted. He lifted his fist, and he even went on to say that the deputy minister, had actually done well in doing that slogan. So here is a president who is indicating left and turning right. And if the president Mnangagwa was serious about not wanting the third term, he would kill this debate in a minute. And that is to simply to issue an instruction to his party that that is not acceptable. Because look, let's face it, it is causing so much strife in the country, so much uncertainty. People within the state establishment going to react, and how are they going to react? People don't know. And people are already taking precautions, hoarding money, not even banking money, because they don't know what can happen. Why should the president not simply set the record straight and ban this slogan?
But again, sorry to interject, in his defense, once more, I'm being his advocate, as it were, at the moment. He has said, as a constitutionalist, he lets people discuss whatsoever topic that they want to discuss, and it's allowed to discuss. It
is a very unsensible thing for a president to say that. You can't say people can say anything because they have a democratic right to say anything.
Right.
Just to give you an illogical example, to take it to its illogical conclusion. If people were to move around in the city to say people of a certain ethnic group must be killed, can the president say it's a free country, people are free to speak? In terms of our constitution, and President Mnangagwa ought to know this, because when we concluded this constitution, on the day that we concluded it, he was present.
Right.
And coincidentally, he was sitting directly opposite myself. And he knows that there is a clause in the constitution that all the constitutional rights are subject to the freedoms of others. Now, when you bring alarm and despondency because of an irresponsible slogan, you have gone beyond simply freedom and exercise of rights. You are now you are now performing an infraction on the rights of others. Now, there's also something meaningless that the president said, that people think sure that he does not want the third term. And that's when he says, I'm a constitutionalist.
Right.
That's very meaningless, Sean, because he may mean that when the constitution is changed, he will follow it.
Right.
So if a constitution is changed and you follow it, you are a constitutionalist. So if you let the people make an undemocratic change to the constitution and you follow that constitution, you are a constitutionalist. So when he says I'm a constitutionalist, he is saying nothing. It's totally meaningless at law.
So essentially you would want him to actually specify the dates that he will retire in 2028 precisely. Not saying I'm a constitutionalist, but to say I will retire in 2028. That's what you want him to pronounce.
Well, the president may not have to say that because we all know when he's going to go.
Right.
The constitution is very clear. He is going to go in the last month of the 5th year.
Right.
And that's what our constitution says. Whether he likes it or he doesn't like it, or whether he says it or he doesn't say it. So saying it is mere tautology. What the president must say is that he is not going to seek a third term or an extension of term, and that he must call to order those of his colleagues in ZANU-PF who are spreading this. People like Minister Garwe, that's what he's known for. He's supposed to be the Minister of Local Government. We must know him for service delivery. We must know him for provision of housing to the urban poor. We must know him of other things that a Minister of Local Government is known for. We know the Zimbabweans know Minister Garwe for by 2030. They know Minister Garwe as a person who bashes Blessed Geza. Attacking a man who is not there is not a very honorable thing for me. That's what he is known for. He is not known for any competence at all. So this, what President Mnangagwa must then say, order his ministers, is that you are causing alarm and despondency, unnecessary alarm and despondency in our country. Stop it. And they would stop. ZANU-PF is a commandist organization. The president himself is a former soldier, isn't he? So he should just give a command.
Right. Let's revert back to the courts for a moment. On the 28th of February, there was a High Court ruling by Justice Shaw that nullified your 2022 December Congress. That means your election at that Congress has been nullified, as well as your executive, in that it was not compliant with the MDC Constitution. and the challenge was brought by your former Vice President Elias Mudzuri, and he's since celebrated that victory. And what is firstly your position as the president of the party regarding that ruling?
I think Senator Mudzuri celebrated too early, and it's never a good idea when you have legal matters to celebrate as if you have won a World Cup. This victory in court shown is totally meaningless to him. In fact, it's a serious disadvantage to him, and this is because although the court nullified the 2022 Congress, right, it did not nullify Mwonzora's presidency. I see many media houses are saying Mwonzora has been removed, right, by the courts. That's not correct. What the court simply said is that the Congress of 2022, for two reasons, did not comply with the Constitution, and therefore it is nullified. It ends there. The court does not say a fresh Congress must be held. It does not say that. It does not say a fresh Congress must be held in 6 months. That's not what it says. It does not reinstate Engineer Mudzuri at all, or anyone for that matter. What that means is that if we don't appeal against this judgment, it means we go back to the leadership as it after the extraordinary Congress. And as you know, at the extraordinary Congress, only one position was voted for, and that was the position of president on the 27th of December 2020. Right. And at that Congress, 4 people contested for presidency: Engineer Mudzuri, Senator Komichi, Senator Kupe, and myself. And Engineer Mudzuri had 14 votes. Senator Komichi scored 9 votes, right, and Senator Kupe scored 118 votes, a handsome score. I scored 888 votes, so it was no match. So we derived legitimacy from there. That extraordinary Congress was never challenged. So if you say that we made a mistake or we didn't do well in 2022 and the Congress is nullified, you go back to the leadership that was there before the Congress. Right. And the leadership that was there before the Congress is the leadership that is headed by myself. I remain the president. For Senator Mudzuri, however, he became vice president because I appointed him as vice president after the extraordinary Congress. Okay. And how we did it is that we convened a national council where we then where I proposed his name, that he should be the second vice president. And they accepted that, and he became the second vice president. But the court judgment, his court judgment, then says that the national council cannot sit as a continuation of Congress. Right. And therefore, when we sat as a continuation of Congress after 2020 and elected him, we acted illegally. And therefore, his appointment as president is null and void. He reverts back to the position that he was appointed before the extraordinary Congress by Dr. Kupe, and that is the position of deputy national chairperson. Right. That is if we interpret the constitution like that. But as you know, we have appealed against the decision. It is a very unsensible decision. First of all, the judge says that we violated the timelines. And the timelines, we were supposed to give 30 days. We gave 24 days notice. In other words, we shortened the time by 6 days. And the reason was that this was towards Christmas. And this was with the concurrence of the delegates. And the very first resolution of this Congress says we are condoning as Congress the departure from the time limits by 6 days. But to nullify a whole Congress because of 6 days that people in that Congress agreed upon is very, very wrong. That's number one. Number two, the judge says the National Council cannot sit as an extension of Congress. this has always been the case since 1999. All the MDC congresses do not finish their business, and they defer the business to the first National Council meeting. Now, it may not be in the constitution of the MDC, but we know that at constitutional law, if you have a tradition which you adhere to year in, year out, that tradition becomes part of the law, part of the constitution. The judge didn't see that. Then the very fatal mistake that the judge made was to say, because the Women's Congress was not held, therefore the whole Congress is nullified. Now, he is wrong. First of all, when we hold our congresses, the delegates get into one room. And they are holding old positions. They go into one room, they are accredited. And the first business is the main Congress, election of people in the main Congress. This happened. The women's delegates were there, the youth delegates were there. Then after that, after the main Congress, then the Congress breaks into Youth Congress and Women Congress. The Youth Congress, unlike what the judge says, actually took place. It was short because most of the officers there were elected and opposed. The youngsters did trade-offs and ended up not doing many elections. The Women Congress went on, but it could not be concluded because, one, the police had given us up to 8 p.m. That evening. And we asked for extension of time, and up to 12 midnight, the Congress was not over. The women were squabbling over something. We then, as per tradition, deferred the Women's Congress to another day. This is not the first time it has happened. At the very, very inaugural Congress of the MDC, the youths, including Nelson Chamisa, could not agree. And they fought during the Congress. I think it was Aquatic Complex, I'm sure, in Chitungwiza. Right. We had to stop that Congress, the Youth Congress, and we chose another day to have that Congress at the University of Zimbabwe. That's where Chamisa was then elected in the youth. And the Women's Congress, I've forgotten the year, I think should be 2005, if I'm not mistaken. But that was the Congress which involved Teresa Makoni and Margaret Matibenga. The Congress took place, but the women could not agree. And the Congress was deferred from Harare. It was then held in Bulawayo on a separate day. So this is the tradition of the MDC. Over the years, it has always happened. And when we held our Congress and we encountered that problem, we found no problem. We then said there will be a Women's Congress as and when they are ready and as and when they are in agreement. So what the judge did there was very, very wrong, and we have appealed to the Supreme Court. The effect of the appeal is to suspend the decision appealed against. Right. So the sheriff remains the sheriff in town. And what that means also is that the celebration was done too early now, because the status quo then remains. Engineer Mudzuri remains where he was. The other applicants remain where they are. They were. And I remain in the Harvest House as the legitimate leader of the MDC. If I'm to question
your popularity within the MDC, how do you rate yourself versus, say, Mudzuri or Komichi and others?
Absolutely no match, Sean.
You would defeat them in
I will defeat them 3 times over. Because number one, look, Sean, in 2020, when we did the election, I scored 888. Yes. If you compare to Honorable Mudzuri, it is 14 versus 888.
So somebody would say, if you are that popular and based on the outcome of that Congress, why not abide by this resolution of court, whereby you can just sort of close ranks with your former members or Mudzuri and others, and redo a Congress if you really trust that you can win? Why not, instead of expending time going to the Supreme Court, why not just abide by it? It's a court ruling after all, and you then go to an election, and if you are popular again, like you put it up, you can always then win.
Safe to say, Sean, our Congress costs $200,000.
Right.
So to get to a party to spend $200,000 on something which is totally unnecessary is wrong. After all, the Congress of the MDC, the next Congress of the MDC, is in 2027. And the Congress processes will start in 2026, which is next year. So we will have, what they want is for us to have a Congress this year, and then after that, have a Congress next year. We can't be part of Congresses. But when it comes to issues of reaching out, I have reached out. When I held the press conference after the judgment, I reached out. I said I wanted to engage Engineer Mudzuri and the other applicants. Yeah. I meant it. I also went to extend to other people who have left the MDC, yeah, who no longer have political parties or who may want to come back home, people like Chamisa, people like Tendai, Biti, and so on and so forth. I extended that to them with no strings attached. And what was the response? The response was a few hours later, there was a circular by Engineer Mudzuri calling all the MDC members to gather at Harvest House so that he could explain the court judgment the following morning. They wanted to overrun Harvest House. And of course, we couldn't just sit there and let people use anarchy to resolve whatever it me to step down. All forms of unpleasant things were said against me by them. But I was there to say, let's come together. Yesterday, we then had our National Standing Committee. Although I was angered by them, annoyed by what they had done, I knew that MDC is bigger than Douglas Mwonzora. Yes. Zimbabwe is bigger than Douglas Mwonzora. And therefore, my own emotions have to be relegated. So the National Standing Committee said, let's do what is right. Mr. President, can you appoint a 3-member committee to go and engage Mudzuri and company? Right. I did that without wasting time, gave them the terms of reference. Today, they were at his house. Right. We are very, very serious about engagement. But we also have to disabuse ourselves of the tendency that every time you lose an election, you want to blame someone else who has won, instead of supporting the winner and hoping to do better next time. So if the push comes to shove, Sean, I have quite a number of options over this judgment. One is to simply say I'll call for Congress in July, if they want, to say, okay, let's have the Congress in July. Right. Same delegates, okay, because the delegates were not attacked by the judge. The judge did not say that the delegates were wrong. The judge simply said the term limits were wrong.
Well, isn't that rigging, though, in a way, if you insist on the same delegates, precisely to juxtapose against them not being attacked by the judge? Why not have a complete set of agreed new delegates to attend?
Save that, Sean, the Congress delegates are not agreed upon. They are delegates that are delegates by operation of law.
Right.
And these are ward chairpersons, the lowest structure, ward chairpersons, district people, executive people, provincial executive people, and so on. National executive people, they do exist. Right. The register is there, and they can verify. So I can say today, okay, gentlemen, let's have a Congress in July or June, and so on. They will complain again. Or I can say, let's have the Congress as and when the party can afford it. Now they want a Congress in 6 months. That's not what the judge said. In 6 months, a party like MDC cannot raise 200,000 from nowhere to do a Congress. I want that money to be used to reorganize the party, to be used to buy regalia for the party. We have a lot of deaths that happen within the party. We have to assist in funerals. We have a lot of welfare issues. Youngsters come to say they are at school, but they cannot afford their school fees, and the party sometimes helps.
Right.
That's the what we use the money for, not to assuage personal egos. You lost, and you don't want to accept it. Let's have another Congress, hoping that there will be a different outcome. But to put it clear, if the Supreme Court says that we must have a Congress, we will have the Congress. I will call for the Congress. And if people insist on a Congress in any particular manner, that is in the Constitution, absolutely no problem, Sean. I will beat them and they know it. And I want you to mark this statistic. I will beat them by 88%.
Okay, let me come back to the courts once more, right? You are a lawyer by profession, a prominent one at that, and basically you're an officer of the court, right? So your reaction to the court judgment, some may interpret it as sort of unloyally, perhaps, in that you seemed to be rather harsh towards the judgment and the judge, as opposed to a certain decorum for being an officer of the law. So what brought about that particular reaction, and also is this supposed to be the norm? When you lose a court case, then it's supposed to be political interference and some such, or you simply have to accept it, and then if you want to challenge, you go ahead and challenge it?
Well, lawyers take an oath before they become lawyers that practice.
Right.
And the wording of that oath is very, very important to uphold the laws.
Right.
It is not to assuage the ego of the judges, no. And therefore, when I criticized a judge, I did not criticize out of the blue. I gave my reasons. For example, what's the difference between 30 days and 24 days if the delegates agree? And there is a resolution which says we have condoned this departure as delegates. We want to go to Christmas early, so we have agreed to have our Congress 6 days earlier. Why should a judge ignore that? And why should the judge who presided over this case in 2023 March sit the whole of 2023 without issuing a judgment, sit the whole of 2024 without issuing a judgment, sit the whole of January and February of 2025 without making a judgment, and makes a judgment when coincidentally the party is pushing a certain issue, the fight against the 2030.
Yeah.
What a coincidence. For me, it ceases to be a mere coincidence. And that's why I said this is fishy, and Justice Joe, as a judicial officer, must explain himself. Why were you quiet in the whole of 2023, the whole year? 2024, you never said anything. And by the way, the judgment is what? 5 pages? Less than 5 pages.
Right.
So you take 2023, 2024, a quarter of 2025. To what? To come up with 5 pages of a judgment. That is fishy. And it's up to the judge to justify himself. But the criticism is decently clothed. Why is it that this judgment is coming when the MDC has just criticized the 2030 agenda? So, well, if it quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, flies like a duck, lays eggs like a duck, then it must be a duck. But I wasn't unloyally as to just criticize. I am asking the judge to explain to the Zimbabweans why that happened.
Mm-hmm. And also in that same regard again, on your conduct as an officer of the court, you described the lawyers for Engineer Mudzuri as being low quality lawyers at your presser. And one of the lawyers happened to be a veteran of your party, Innocent Gonese, he used to be the chief whip, I understand, but you describe them as being low quality. Again, would that be a fair comment?
You misunderstood what I said. With respect, I wasn't speaking of just of Engineer Mudzuri's lawyers, right, who handled this case. I was talking about the lawyers who are speaking in the groups, right, in his groups, and these were the lawyers who were saying that you cannot appeal against a declaratory order. Right. You cannot, even if you were to appeal against the declaratory order, they were saying a lot of funny things. And I said, this is said by people who know nothing about the law, right, and they are low quality lawyers. Right. I wasn't referring to Honorable Gonese. I wasn't referring to Taku Mudzuri, for example. I know both of them. Taku Mudzuri is quite an intelligent young man. He was helping his father. I have no cause to insult him at all. But I was referring to the lawyers whom you find in the MDC groups, misleading people. And they are definitely low quality lawyers. Any lawyer of quality would know that appeals are governed by Section 43 of the High Court Act. It's a basic. It's taught in first year. And if a lawyer who is practicing doesn't know that, then they are low quality lawyers. So, for example, Sean, you can, as a footballer, you can tell other footballers that that's a low quality footballer. Right. That's a poor defender. That's a poor goalkeeper.
It's a fair comment.
It's a fair comment. These are low quality lawyers, misleading people, you know, and people have a tendency of listening to lawyers, you know. I'm very glad that to show you that I wasn't referring to the lawyers who argued this case, Gonese and Mudzuri, because they did not make any comment. Right. They did not say anything about this case. Right. In fact, they are yet to comment. The people who were commenting were people who had nothing to do with the case. They did not even sit in the court. I doubt whether they had even read the judgment. And there they were pretending to be very educated in the groups, and saying things which were very wrong. And I think it was fair comment to say they were very poor and low quality, crass lawyers actually.
Right. Someone, we were talking outside of when we were coming here with a colleague. He was saying it seems Douglas Mwonzora may be afraid of implementing this court judgment or allowing it to take effect, in that he is afraid this situation is his political Waterloo, as it were. And he was also referring to what Engineer Mudzuri said, that you have killed the MDC, that under your leadership the MDC is basically dead. So I'm not sure what your position is in terms of the state of the MDC, as well as the fear that perhaps you are inferred to have.
I've just told you, Sean, that if the Supreme Court rules that there must be a rerun of the Congress, right, we will abide by that. Right. And the reason why I am reluctant to just plunge the party into a Congress is that it will cost my party $200,000. And I'm not so sure whether it's a wise expenditure at all. And if those people don't win, they will go back to the courts. We spend another $200,000. So before we spend $200,000, it has to be absolutely justified. As president of my party, I have the duty to defend the organization. I have the duty to make sure that the organization works in a rational manner, especially when it comes to its resources. Why throw $200,000 to assuage an ego, right? When it is clear that the judge is wrong, and when it is clear that another court may come to a different conclusion. People who appeal are not necessarily afraid of anything. They are appealing against what they perceive is injustice. Right. It is injustice whether you are Douglas Mwonzora or Sean. You know, I am entitled as a person to procedural justice. What should I do if I'm not satisfied with the judgment? Yeah, I should appeal. I should not worry that some person will say Mwonzora is afraid it's his Waterloo. I just want to address that Waterloo thing. How many Waterloos am I supposed to be having? After we lost the 2022 by-elections, they called it a Waterloo. After we started fighting the delimitation and ended up pulling out of the 2023 election in protest, they called it a Waterloo. It turned out that we were right. Now we are fighting the delimitation. We are being fought back. We are reacting to the fight, and they call it a Waterloo. They call it cowardice. I don't think it is cowardice to resort to legitimate tactics, to resort to legitimate strategy. Appeal is a sound strategy. If the appeal succeeds, Sean, we save the party of 200,000 United States dollars. And at any rate, I have asked Engineer Mudzuri and the company that let's engage. So whether the appeal is there or not, if they are serious about rebuilding the party, they can come and we can re-engage and so on. So a lot of people, Sean, misunderstand me purposely. That is, at one time somebody said in South Africa that they were surprised that I spoke English this well, you know, because they have a negative attitude that they have. Yeah. Some people, I think I heard somebody saying that they were commenting about my property and so on. They were commenting about my family, nothing good that they do. But I want to put yourself in my shoes. The party will spend 200,000. If there's a way of avoiding that expenditure, I would avoid it. That 200,000 does not bring a single vote for the MDC. It is a vote within the MDC. I want to use that money to recruit more people into the party, to make sure that our people who need help within the party are helped. So it is a very rational proposition that I'm making.
Right. Lastly, on the courts, before we move to other matters, you were a beneficiary of a court ruling. That's how basically you, I would say you repossessed or possessed perhaps the MDC, as it were. That 29 ruling that basically annulled the appointment of Nelson Chamisa and Engineer Mudzuri by the late Dr. Shangirai. And so you were happy with that ruling with the courts then because they agreed with the position that basically benefited you. But now this one again, you are against it because it went against you. What's your position on that?
I was not a beneficiary of any court ruling, Sean. I was a beneficiary of the votes given to me by the members of the MDC. The Supreme Court judgment that you are referring to was not brought. The court case was not brought by me. In fact, I was a respondent. I was being sued as well, just the same as Nelson Chamisa and the others. We got to the High Court. I explained to Chamisa as Secretary General and also as a senior lawyer to say that if it goes to the Supreme Court, we will not win it because the court judgment specifically is saying that you should have gone to Congress. And here is the Constitution. It says we should have gone to Congress. Chamisa refused. Biti was there and Walshman was there. They refused that we abide by the court decision. I thought that it was unwise to do that. I made a different election. We then went to Extraordinary Congress where we campaigned and I was fairly voted. So there is no favor that I got from the courts. I campaigned to the MDC people. They agreed with me. They thought that I could be their leader and they were not wrong. And people have criticized my leadership. One of the most important things, especially when you are inheriting a party like the MDC that has gone through turbulence, it was split in 2014, not by myself. In 2005, right. Not by myself. It was split in 2014, not by myself. I had nothing to do with it. It was split in 2018, not by myself, but because the two vice presidents, Kupe and Chamisa, three vice presidents, and Mudzuri, were fighting over the crumbs, even on the funeral of President Tsvangirai. One of them was busy beating up others. One of them was trying to burn people in a house.
Which one is that one, if I may?
It was Chamisa's people. Chamisa's people tried to burn Tokozani Kupe, Chief Ndlovu, myself, Abeniko Bebe, in a hut. And it is there on video. Everything is there. And of course, Zimbabweans choose to ignore that, of course. There was attempted murder there. Advocate Chamisa did not criticize the people who did that. And they were saying it in his name. And then we come to 2020. 2020, Advocate Chamisa takes his case to the Supreme Court. He loses it. I had nothing to do with it. So it had nothing to do with me. If at all, I've remained a beacon of one principle, that we must follow our constitution, that we must follow rules, and that we must stick to principle no matter what. So it was not in fashion that during 2020 to insist on a constitution. Number two, it was not in fashion in 2023 to fight delimitation. Three, it was not in fashion in 2023 to say let's boycott the election. It is not in fashion with certain people to criticize the 2030 agenda, but we will do it as the MDC because it is the correct thing to do. And our leadership has been very, very consistent. And right now, Sean, people of Zimbabwe are beginning the leadership of the MDC. At one point in time, somebody challenged me that if I walked into First Street, I would be killed by people. But if I walk into First Street right now, everybody wants a selfie with me. Right. Because they say you are right, you were right. We were too slow to see these things. And I'm quite happy with that.
Talking about you being right, there's a friend of mine who happens to agree with your position that you took regarding the delimitation. At that particular point in time, he was very against it. He surmised that you were trying to delay the election, so you hold on to your position as the leader of the opposition then in Parliament. But now, in hindsight, as we speak privately, he says no, Mwonzora was right on the delimitation. That was a very big mistake to go into an election. So maybe you may want to explain to Zimbabweans again why that fight for delimitation, why you took that fight, and also why it's important, and secondly, how you are going to fight once more to have a very decent or acceptable delimitation as we go towards 2028.
It was very clear when one looked at the delimitation that it was an instrument for manipulating the electoral process. Right. That is why you see, if you look at the delimitation in Bulawayo alone, you have 15,000 voters who do not belong to any constituents in Bulawayo. And therefore, you then have Bulawayo losing one seat. And then you have a situation where Mount Pleasant, with I think almost 30,000 voters, is paired the same as Bulawayo Central with 22,000 voters. I think a difference of 40% being allowed in the delimitation process. So it was clear that this was an instrument of voter manipulation. But not only of voter manipulation, it was also an instrument of affecting primary elections and rig primary elections in individual political parties. Right. And that is why I said to the Triple C that if they proceed to do their Congress, their candidate selection using this delimitation, their party is going to split. So we then saw Rusty Markham and Tendai Biti, suddenly they are in the same constituency, and the Triple C was unable now to do a primary, and they ended up with Bereka Mwana or whatever, all those forms of funny ways of candidate selection. And here we are, it is split. And it is split. We now have people like Chabango coming in and saying this one was not supposed to be the candidate. Maybe they are right. It's because of this delimitation. So next time, Zimbabweans, we must listen to one another. I am talking right now to people of Zimbabwe about the dangers of the third term. Not because I dislike President Mnangagwa. He has been given his 2 terms. He is 83. He will be 86 in 2028. Why another term? When, Mr. President, are you going to be writing your memoirs? Why should we consign this country to perpetual sanctions? Because we simply want to be in power. I disagree.
Mr. President, you were talking about the importance of delimitation. Now, my question is, and this question came from a friend. He asked me to ask you this question. He says, since currently the MDC is not in Parliament, so it has limited capacity to within Parliament to fight for reforms in terms of how elections are conducted and a delimitation that is acceptable to all parties and say all Zimbabweans. What method, what manner of engagement or tackling are you going to tackle this issue of delimitation so that it won't repeat itself again in 2028?
Thank you very much. First of all, you don't have to be in Parliament to fight for reform.
Right.
In fact, Parliament is not a very good place to be in order to fight for reforms. Outside Parliament is better. You are more objective because you are not dealing with personal things. When you are a parliamentarian and you have a constituency, you tend to want to defend the boundaries of that constituency. It's natural to do that. So the MDC was part to the formation of the National Electoral Reform Agenda. We want the opposition to unite so that we push for key electoral reforms. And we can push for key electoral reforms by educating the people, making the people make key demands, also pressurizing the government, pressurizing the parliament, without being violent even. We can also have international advocacy regarding electoral reforms. And this is what we are trying to do at the National Electoral Reform Agenda. And we have called on all Zimbabweans, on all progressive forces in Zimbabwe to join hands to fight for electoral reforms. We must have an electoral system which is such that when a person wins, they are congratulated by the losers. When a person loses, they are not bitter. They do not think that their loss was contrived by somebody. So we need to do electoral reforms. And unfortunately, with the opposition in Zimbabwe right now, is that when an idea does not come from their leader, then it is no idea and it has to be fought. Right. Delimitation did not come from Chamisa, and Chamisa's people fought against it and committed political suicide. Right now, the fight against the 2030 did not come from other opposition parties. It came from the MDC initially, and some people will have a tendency of refusing it simply because it has come from someone else. And we must move away from that mentality as the people of Zimbabwe. We need to unite. Our country needs us. Whether you are ZANU-PF or MDC, it doesn't matter. You need a country which is not a laughing stock of the world.
Right. And speaking of your colleagues in the opposition, Advocate Chamisa, Biti, Mudzuri, who you are currently engaged in combat with, as it were, and others that you called on to come back to the MDC. Outside of politics, what's your relationship like with these erstwhile colleagues of yours? Like, do you relate? Do you talk? Do you communicate?
I am a very friendly person. I am glad that God made me that way. I talk to Tendai Biti. I talk to Chamisa when I meet them. I talk to Madugu. Madugu is just next door. We stay in the same neighborhood. And other political parties. I do not have any enemy within the political circles. And I have reached out at various political leaders. Right now, I made my call that we should come together. When we were talking about the 2030 fight, I did approach some of the opposition figures, and they were very happy for us to work together. So I think we should be more serious as the opposition. But I want to say that we as the leaders must order our people, as I have done with the MDC. We must order our people to de-escalate conflict. Some supporters think that it is in fashion to be seen bashing Chamisa or bashing Biti or bashing Mwonzora, depending on which part you are. Some people even believe that if you meet Mwonzora at a funeral and you beat him up, then you are endearing yourself to the leader. And that is not helped by the leader keeping quiet when another political leader is being attacked by your supporters right in front of you. It's a tragedy indeed. But I think as Zimbabweans, we must sit together, irrespective of our political persuasions, and do what is right for our country. It is right for our country that we stick to our constitution. It is right for our country that we foster everlasting peace in our country. It is right for our country that we are seen to respect human rights. It's not right that Blessed Mhlanga hosts a show where somebody is expressing political opinion and is put to jail for it. That is absolutely unacceptable. This is a journalist who doesn't like me, and everybody knows that. But it's wrong what is being done to him. He hosted a show. I watched the shows. It is not him who was saying those things. It was somebody else. And to then put him to court and even deny bail, I don't think Blessed...
It's excessive.
It's very, very excessive. I don't think Blessed is a terrorist at all. Yeah. And he's not a threat to national security. He may have opinions that I don't approve of, but he has the right to hold those opinions, you know. And therefore, as the MDC, we join the whole progressive world in condemning what is happening to Blessed, and we hope that should not continue. What is happening to Ngaruvume as well is very, very wrong. And we must come together as Zimbabweans and defend the civil liberties that we have.
Right. You have been at the forefront of leading the anti-2030 agenda from the opposition side of the story. Yourself and Tendai Biti as well. I've spoken to him on several occasions, and he also has been very, very upfront. It seems you are basically the leading voices of this push against the agenda. But someone may say you perhaps may have a personal vendetta against the president, the sitting president, that is. That's why you are so I would say so vociferous against this agenda. And he has expressed, of course, his position on that. But your vigorous position, some may think it's motivated
Zimbabweans confuse me, Sean. At one point in time, they accused me of being Mnangagwa's blue-eyed boy.
Right.
And now they are now accusing me of having a vendetta against him. Which is which? And these are the same people. One will say, depending on the convenience of the moment, Mwonzora is pro-Mnangagwa. And then after that, Mwonzora has a vendetta against Mnangagwa. I don't have a vendetta against President Mnangagwa. I have a vendetta against his idea of a third term. It is wrong. It will consign this country to further sanctions. It will mean Zimbabwe remains in the eyes of the world a pariah state. It's not his right to put us through that. This 2030 agenda is bringing so much uncertainty in this country. You hear people say there are rumors. One day, I think there was a convoy of military vehicles,
yes.
And there was speculation of what was going on. I even phoned my wife because she works in proximity to where the convoy was, to ask whether she was safe.
Right.
Why should we go through that as Zimbabweans because of this third term? if President Mnangagwa was to do the right thing, dissuade these people against the third term, we will not have anything against him. We have something against him, which is that he wants to emasculate the Constitution, or he is not safeguarding the Constitution. He is waiting to be, he said, to persuade the persuaders, not to persuade him. And I just wondered when you were saying that, because some people thought it was a very smart thing to say. But if you analyze it, it was a very, very dangerous thing to say. Because I would have asked him, Mr. President, you say you are going to persuade. What if you don't succeed in persuading? What will happen? What will happen is that you have a third term.
Right. Now that makes sense. Last question before we close, Mr. President, is so what's the way forward for you, for the MDC, going forward towards, say, 2028?
The way forward for the MDC is to come together, to engage and to minimize conflict. And that is why I have approached my colleagues within the MDC, Engineer Mudzuri, No Rest Marara, Denford Moyo, Edward Kakora, John Nyika, who are members who won this judgment that we have appealed against, to say that they are welcome to MDC. They must come and we must work together. I don't claim to be right in everything. We must come together. I want their ideas. They probably will also find mine useful as well. We must carry the people's struggle. Even those people who went out of the MDC, and there are quite a lot of them who went out of the MDC, who don't have a political home now and are afraid to come because they think that they said so many horrible things to me that they cannot face me. No, as the MDC is bigger than Douglas Mwonzora, Zimbabwe is bigger than Douglas Mwonzora. What lies ahead is for the benefit of us all. A just Zimbabwe, a prosperous Zimbabwe, a Zimbabwe that is a democracy is what we are fighting for. And we want our people to come together. We want electoral reforms in this country. We want to talk about issues in this country. And what ZANU-PF has done is to remove debate from issues to one issue, that is the issue of the third term. Maybe it's their way of keeping Zimbabwe occupied, I don't know, but they are not doing the country any favor at all. And the members of parliament, they are supposed to keep oversight on the government. No one is saying anything about the corruption that is in government, about our mineral wealth that is being siphoned outside the country by foreigners without any benefit by our people. Nobody is saying that because everybody is enmeshed in this third term agenda. And I think as Zimbabweans, we must come together and talk and take our country forward. As I said, every Zimbabwean is a stockholder in this country.
Right. And lastly, an interesting point before you conclude, Mr. President, there is the issue of Senator Sengezo Tshabangu, who is in the Triple C, or I'm not sure if he was fired recently by Professor Walshman Ncobe's party, but basically he has been a Triple C senator. There has been talk that he came out of nowhere. He was never a known member in the opposition, yet word has come out that also maybe he always was a member of the MDCT. You were in one party at one point or another with everyone in this opposition.
Well, those who say Tshabangu came from nowhere are lying through their teeth. And these are people who know him. Let me tell you who Tshabangu is. I was the legal advisor of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions in the early 90s. And Tshabangu was there as a trade unionist.
Oh, is that so?
He was in the Hotel and Catering Workers Union. And I know it because I taught him in one of the courses. Mashagada and myself taught him in one of the courses. Right. And during the formation of the MDC, he was present. And he was part of the group that took what was called the raw data and so on. And he became the chairperson of the MDC for the Tebeleland North Province.
Right.
In 2011, Chabangu, when we did our Congress, Chabangu was actually the chairperson of the province. When he had that horrific accident, Chabangu, he was a member of the MDC. And then when Biti and company broke away, Chabangu broke away with them.
MDC renewal, was that
PDP.
Yeah.
PDP. It was a MDC renewal. Yeah. They then called it the PDP. And when Nelson Chamisa brought the PDP back to the MDC at the Gweru Congress, Chabangu came with Biti. Right. And when we went to the 2022 by-elections, Chabangu was the acting Secretary General of the CCC. He signed for some candidates. Right. And even in 2023, he signed for some candidates in their election. So in what way do they say they don't know him? Not knowing him and disagreeing with him are two different things. If they say they disagree with him, then that's fair. To say they don't know him is utterly false. He is their member. He has always been their member.
All right. No, that's clarified. We are about to close, Mr. President, so we would want, as is custom, your word, number one, towards the President as head of state, is an institution, and then your word to members of the opposition, your colleagues, and then lastly, to Zimbabweans.
To President Mnangagwa, we come in peace. We want you to abide by your oath that you took when you took office, to defend the Constitution of our Republic. And we, in that regard, ask you to remove this idea of the third term. It does not do your legacy any good, the country any good, or anybody for that matter any good. Those people who are seeking to persuade you are either making money out of proximity with you, or they have something else that they are doing. The people of Zimbabwe deserve the integrity of their constitution to be preserved. To the people of Zimbabwe, we have many things to fight about, to fight for. In our country, there is poverty, unemployment, there is misery in this country. We want to make sure that every Zimbabwean enjoys being a Zimbabwean, enjoys the natural resources of their country. For that reason, we want all Zimbabweans to be included in the economy, to be included in mining, in agriculture, in service industry, etc. Every Zimbabwean must get what to do, and so on. We want free education for our people. We want free maternity care. We want free medical care for people who cannot afford. And for us to do that, we need everlasting peace. We need democracy, and we need free and fair elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zimbabwe, for watching. My name is Sean Moyo. Catch you on the next program.